So my friend asked me, why are periods viewed as unclean if it is natural? We'll be going over that today. Now obviously this video is going to be more on the mature topic, so if you're on the younger side, I recommend skipping this video and maybe just, swipe. But if you think you're up for it, I obviously cannot stop you. In Leviticus 15 it says this: when a woman has a discharge, if her discharge is in her body is blood, she shall continue in her menstrual impurity for 7 days, and whoever touches her shall become unclean until evening. Before we get into this verse, I want to note two specific things. First of all, this is not a law that still applies today. This is what we call a ceremonial law or an old covenant law. Now what are those? Well, I already have an article on that if you're really interested, but I'm just going to give the rundown. That being that these laws no longer apply today. They were laws that were specifically set for Jews of a certain era, and this does not apply anymore. Secondly, I want to note that being unclean is not sinful. Now it certainly sounds it. When you think of something like unclean, you think of like dirty and like grimy, but in the context of Leviticus, it is not sinful. If you're unclean, all that means is that you cannot go into synagogue or take part in certain ceremonies. We of course know this by Jesus, who is sinless, who touched a leopard and made him clean. Now if you didn't know, if you touch something unclean, for example a corpse or someone who was just considered unclean for the moment, you would thus become unclean as well for a certain duration of time. And Jesus touched a leper. If Jesus was sinless, he obviously wouldn't have been able to touch a leopard, but he did, thus meaning that unclean is not sinful. So now I want to get to the topic of why is a period considered unclean. So the Bible is not exactly specific over the reason of it. Just like many certain things, we kind of have to just interpret or assume why it can be so. So like I said, no one's really sure specifically why it's considered unclean. But there are two main ideas of why this could be. The first one simply being that because it just makes things unclean. So in more of a literal sense. So it can ruin garments and it can ruin furniture and things like that. So some people have kind of taken that kind of position. Other people simply say that God made them unclean so they can just not take part in ceremonies, that they can just relax. Keep in mind that back then we didn't really have very good products for that kind of stuff, so it's better to just make it through it.